Hello everyone and hope you all are fine and this is Preeti Sharma. Welcome to the social science class. Yes, today we are going to start a new chapter of history and the chapter name is the modern period. This is first chapter. So let us start. Why study history? See, for this, we have to know about the history, the definition of history. See, history is the study of changing patterns in the society. See, no two periods are alike in the history. So, we can say it is the study of changes that occur over time. So, by studying history, we try to know how things were in the past and how they have changed over the years. And things that we see today have their roots in the past. So, here one question are arising: how has the study of history evolved over time? See, over time, history has developed and evolved. Once it revolved around the life of powerful people like the kings or personality based, you can say. So at that time, history was just the study of battles and big events, and it was about the rulers and their policies. But now, history has become the study of the common people. It talked about the life of common people and also about the new ideas. And it has become a study of how societies and economies change with time. Now, historians look at how people earned their livelihood, what they produced and ate, how cities developed and markets came up, how cultures and societies changed. So, we will read about these in this chapter. Now, our next topic is periodization of Indian history. See, Indian history is broadly divided into three periods: ancient history, medieval history, and the modernist history. See, about the ancient history, you have read in the class 6, and about the medieval history, you have read in the class 7th. And now, in this class, we will explore the topic of modern history. See, periodization in history has changed over time. And we divide history into periods on the basis of something which has had a profound impact on the way we live. For example, some historians say that the change from the ancient to medieval period occurred with the arrival of Turks in India, and it brought significant changes in the life of the people. Similarly, the change from the medieval to modern period occurred with the arrival of the British on the shores of India. So, all this, however, is simplistic reason. Can we say that the life of the people underwent a sudden change when the Turks came to India or when the British arrived in India? Yes. Now, the 18th century is generally taken as starting point of the modern period, and some of the defining features of the modern era are: first is scientific progress, colonization, urbanization, or growth of cities. And these changing trends were first visible in Europe in course of time, and they also exercised a significant impact on India. So next topic is, was the modern period in India really modern? See, is the word modern an apt description of the British period in India? So, however, we say to say that whether modern periods was really modern for India is highly debatable because of the following reasons. And the reasons are: first, the British rule in India did not apply modern principles of rule of law, equality, liberty, democracy to Indians, and followed the policy of racial discrimination. Second, British treated India as a colony, and they took raw materials from India and made her an importer of finished British goods. Now, what is colonial period? See, the British rule can hardly be described as modern because, according to Indian historians, it was the colonial period. What is colonial period or colonism? Colonialism is the practice by which a powerful country directly controls less powerful countries and uses their resources to increase its own power and wealth. Now, what is colonial period? Colonial period means a period in Indian history when our country was controlled and administrated by a colonial power. We can say the British rule of at that time. So that's why Indian historians call this period the colonial period. After this, the next topic is time in history. See, a span of time is more important in the history rather than a precise date. See, may have heard people saying, I find history boring because it is all about memorizing dates. But it is not true. There was a time when historians were fascinated with dates and they were interested in the dates on which rulers were crowned or battles were fought. So, for this, span of time is more important. A span of time is more important in the history rather than a precise date. And history that was taught earlier was all political history. And it is easier to define dates for events in political history. But there is no exact time for other social and economical events. For example, we know the events of revolt of 1857 date and year wise, but for social and cultural history, exact dates cannot be assigned. Similarly, we cannot tell the exact date, month, year when the feeling of nationalism started growing among the people of India. So, here are four questions, four important questions in history. What is the four questions? First one is what happened? Second, when did it happen? Third, where did it happen? And fourth, how did it happen? So, while we can be sure of the first, there cannot be a precise answer to the other three questions. For example, we know that the British colonized India, but can we pinpoint a reason and say that it happened here? Also, we are not sure exactly how it started and the different forms took over the years. So, there is no straight answers to many questions in the history. So, it was a process. So, we can't give an exact date to it. So, after this, our next topic is interpretations in history. What is interpretation? Interpretation means is the act of explaining, reframing, or showing your own understanding of something. And in history is narration of events from the perspective of the author. That means of different people. Because historians give a perspective to the past events. And this is the reason why historical events have different versions just because of their thinking is different. So history is full of interpretations. So an interpretation is four points, main points are there. Someone's views of the past की different views क्या हैं. Second, created deliberately. Third is after the events, so by someone who was not there at the time. So to get better at history means describe interpretations, understanding how and why they are made, deciding whether they are of any value or not. So the fact is, there are generally differing opinions and interpretations in the history. So it is for us to get the bottom of the story and dig out the truth. Because history is not what happened. History is just what historians tells us. Okay. So each historian has a different perspective to an event. For example, I'm giving you example. According to the British historians, history of British period in India is all about the lives of the different governor generals of India, and it begins with the first governor general Warren Hastings and ends with Lord Mountbatten, the last viceroy. So, whereas an Indian historian focused on India's development under the British period, he will write about the lives of the common people, their means of livelihood, the food they ate, the clothes they wore, and about society. So, the history of the common people is different from that of the governor generals because interpretations differ in history as individuals and group interpret events differently. Interpretation differ in history as individual interprets events differently. After this, our next and last topic of this chapter is sources. See, the period under study has an abundance of source materials. Archaeological sources and literary sources are two main sources. Firstly, we will read about the archaeological sources. Here are the examples of the archaeological sources like forts, coins, paintings, monuments, administrative buildings, churches. But archaeological sources are comparatively less important for this period. So, our next topic is literary sources. See, literary sources for the period are many and varied. And there are original documents like government reports, administrative reports, official records of the British, surveys, and so on. So, in this, we will read about the official records, survey reports, and the indigenous reports. Firstly, we will read about the official records. See, the Mughals introduced the culture of recording everything. The first Mughals were the introduced the system of recording everything, and this system was continued and perfected by the British as they believed that writing was important. And the British kept written records of every key instruction, meeting, investigation, plan, policy, decision, and agreement also. So, those official records of the British administrative offices and government departments are an important source of information to learn about the history, and they clearly wrote down every plan of the British rule. See, British maintained the record rooms. You can see the British felt that all important documents and letters must be carefully preserved. So they built record rooms attached to the all administrative institutions. The village Tehsildar office, the commissioner's office, provincial offices, and the law courts all had their own record rooms, official record rooms. Next point is archives and museums. See, British built special institutions like museums and archives to preserve important documents, and they preserve all the important documents in the national archives and the museums also. What is archive? Archive means a place where historical documents are stored. Okay. The original documents kept here were government reports, maps, administrative records, surveys, and so on. And historians gather important information about the British administrative system like reports, memos, notings, letters. These all are preserved in the archives and record rooms across India. Now, next is survey reports. See, the British also began the practice of conducting surveys. And the British believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administered. So that's why detailed surveys were carried out by the British. And in this, many surveys were done to know the topography, soil quality, and flora, fauna, and the local histories and the cropping pattern also. So all these informations were seen as necessary to know about to administer the region. And in the villages, revenue and land surveys also were conducted to decide how much tax was to be collected, and other mapping was an important part of these surveys. Okay, and the British made a large number of topographic maps. By the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. So what is topographic maps? See, topographic map means a map that shows the physical features of a place. And census also, see, census operation also begin, and all these reports are available to us. What is census? Census means official counting of people living within a country, and census prepared detailed records of the number of people in all the provinces, and this helped to collect information on the religion, caste and occupation of the people. These all surveys have helped historians to collect information about the modern India. Now, do you think that these official records tell us everything? Like, official records are very detailed and easily available, but they do not tell us everything. These records do not help us to understand what common people in the country felt. So, for this, to know that, unofficial records are used, so which of course are more difficult to find as compared to the official records, क्योंकि official records तो easily मिल जाते हैं, unofficial records are very difficult to find. So the unofficial records which we have are diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims and travelers, newspapers, autobiographies of important personalities, and popular booklets, leaflets that were sold in the local bazaars. These all are called the indigenous records, and they tell us about the feelings of the Indians under British. And people wrote in English and in vernaculars. Vernaculars means different type of regional languages. Some non official records are personal diaries of people, accounts of travelers and pilgrims, autobiographies of important people, popular booklets that were sold in local bazaars, newspapers, writing of reformers, poets, freedom fighters, and books. See, Dadabhai Naroji wrote Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, in which he highlighted the exploitative nature of the British rule. And newspapers such as Kesari, which was in Marathi, and Maharatha in English, also made people aware of the real intentions of the British. So, when the national movement was at its peak, the British tried to suppress the press, but they were unsuccessful. And other one is Harijan by Mahatma Gandhi in 1933 and wrote in English also. So this was about your chapter. So in this period is generally regarded as the modern period, and the modern period in India associated with the establishment of British colonial rule and fight we put up against it. So this much is for today. Thank you. Have a